A disturbed mind can lash out when it's least expected. As it did on a clear morning in Canyon Lake, California. 38-year-old Dana Sue Gray is setting out on a shopping trip.
There was something about money and having it and spending it that made Dana Sue feel important.
She looks like a typical suburban mom on her way to the mall. But Dana is a woman with a startling secret.
She used ligature strangulation. She used bludgeoning. She used knives.
Dana Sue Gray is a psychopath. She just committed a brutal murder. Now, she needs some retail therapy. Detective Joe Greco will never forget the gruesome crime scene Dana Sue Gray left behind that day in 1994.
It was a shock because it was only my second homicide case as a detective, and it was overwhelming.
66-year-old June Roberts has been strangled and bashed with a bottle.
It crossed my mind that I had a serial killer on my hands.
No one has ever seen a serial killer like this one.
She's in a class all her own.
The killing spree begins 2 weeks earlier.
Norma, are you there, dear? Norma?
The community was very affluent, and they didn't have a lot of homicides.
Norma?
Alice Williams has not seen her neighbor, Norma Davis, for 2 days.
Where are you, dear?
She's concerned the 86-year-old has fallen ill. The reality is far worse.
A neighbor came by and found her body. The neighbor was never the same after that.
The brutality of the murder also shocks crime writer Kathy Braidhill. Norma has been stabbed. A fillet knife is buried to the hilt in her chest. The handle of another protrudes from her neck. The blade inserted so deep, it has almost severed Norma's head.
We didn't have a lot of information. The only piece of evidence that we had was in the entryway of the condominium. Found a faint shoe print on the floor of the condominium, and it was a 6.5 size shoe.
The shoe print would later be traced to a former nurse named Dana Sue Gray.
Dana Sue Gray was in her mid-30s. She loved thrill sports. She loved rock and roll.
As a young woman, Dana enjoyed skydiving. But increasingly, it's her personal life that's going into free fall.
Dana's life right before the murders was chaotic. She had a lot of emotional setbacks. She had had a miscarriage. She had also sunken into depression and alcoholism, and she was accused of stealing drugs from her job as a nurse.
Fired from her job. Separated from her husband. She seeks solace in alcohol and prescription drugs.
We really don't know why she had started to use drugs. We're thinking perhaps it was because of the depression from the miscarriage. It could have been any number of things.
But when the drugs don't work, there is one thing guaranteed to make Dana Sue feel good.
Spending, purchasing made Dana feel high. It reduced her anxiety. It became compulsive, and it got way out of control.
Dana Sue is hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Her disturbed mind is becoming desperate. Desperate enough to kill.
Once this killing spree started, she was clearly out of control. And I don't think anyone around her was safe.
2 weeks later, 66-year-old June Roberts answers a knock at the door.
Hey, June, look, I was wondering if I could
Recently widowed, June welcomes the visit by a family friend. Little does she know, she has admitted a killer into her home. A killer who leaves her boyfriend's 5-year-old son waiting outside.
I think the fact that Dana Sue had her lover's 5-year-old boy in the car with her, waiting outside in the car while she went into these homes and killed these women, really speaks to the coldness and how little she thought that what she was doing was wrong.
Here it is, look.
It was very brutal. The victim had been strangled with her own telephone cord and actually tied to a chair. And she was struck so hard it fractured her skull.
She used her hands and extreme violence to kill her victims. We don't usually see this in female serial killers. We usually see poison or gun. With a gun, you can kill someone from afar. Dana Sue wanted hands-on.
But perhaps just as shocking as the murders is what Dana chooses to do next.
She didn't even go home after she killed these women and lay low for a while. She just needed to get to the mall.
Canyon Lake, California, 1994. 38-year-old Dana Sue Gray is in the mood to be pampered.
Dana was so meticulous about her appearance, and she always went to a salon for services, for manicures, pedicures, hair color, cotton color, all of that.
Beauty treatments make Dana Sue Gray feel good. But lately, she's found another activity that gives her a thrill. Murder. Dana is halfway through a month-long killing spree. Her first stop after killing her second victim is the mall.
What was taken from June was her checkbook and her credit cards, and right after the murders, Dana went out and she got a beauty treatment and she went shopping.
She immediately went out and drained their bank accounts and used their credit cards on high-ticket items, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, with a little kid in tow, her boyfriend's little 5-year-old with her. Thought nothing of it, thought nothing of it.
Despite being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, Dana Sue is obsessed with spending money.
Dana Sue's issues with money are reported to have existed when she was a girl. Her brother described this. She said, I had to spend, it made me feel good. That the feeling wouldn't last. So the behavior became compulsive. She would repeat it to get the high again.
Psychologists have a term for compulsive shopping, oniomania. But it is not the only reason Dana kills.
Dana didn't take any rings from the victims or some valuables from the home that were obvious. So I don't think anything was motivated there by money.
The next attack reveals more about Dana's motives. 2 weeks later in Lake Elsinore, California, 57-year-old Dorinda Hawkins is working alone in an antique store.
Dorinda was working at the time Dana had walked in and asked about picture frames.
Just wondering how much this one is.
This is actually $55.
Do you do gift wrapping?
Yes, we do. Give me a minute.
And it was there behind the framing tables that Dana strangled Dorinda.
Dorinda was begging for her life when Dana was strangling her. And Dorinda told her, "You can have anything you want, take the cash. You know, I have 8 kids, let me, just let me live." And Dana told her, "I'm not doing this for the money." She said that twice. And that really gives you an insight into what Dana was thinking when she was committing these crimes.
Thinking Dorinda is dead, Dana Sue steals just $25 and flees. But Dorinda is still alive. She's had a lucky escape from a woman with a long history of violence.
When Dana Sue was a young girl and she would be reprimanded or punished by her mother, it was reported that she frequently lashed out violently as a little girl and grew up to do it as a woman.
Dana Sue is motivated by more than money. She also has a deep-seated need for power, a need she satisfies with murder.
Dana liked the fight, and we believe that she killed because she enjoyed having power over somebody and watching them struggle and watching them die.
There is something hidden in Dana's past that explains not only why she killed, but who. As police trace the clues left by her shopping sprees, the final piece in the puzzle of Dana Sue's disturbed mind is about to be revealed.
We were able to do a paper trail with the credit cards and go to the different stores that she had used these credit cards at. And with the merchants, we were able to get a general description of this suspect.
I'm wondering if you've seen this woman.
The shopkeepers recognize the face. So do residents of Canyon Lake. Dana Sue Gray is arrested for murder.
When they finally did apprehend her, her Cadillac was full of grocery bags. Her house was full of expensive perfume. I mean, she had a veritable department store in her house.
We have statements proving that you had spent these cards.
Dana Sue Gray denies the murders. But while she is questioned by Detective Joe Greco, the case takes a horrifying turn.
In the interview, Dana began talking about finding a purse, and that purse belonged to a woman by the name of Dora Beebe.
In the station, at the same time, there were sheriff's deputies working another murder. Joe went to them and asked them the name of their victim. They told him Dora Beebe, and Joe instantly said, "Well, we have your suspect in the other room."
Earlier that day, Dana Sue had knocked on the door of a stranger, asking for a map.
So I knew that we had the right suspect in this case, but I did not know that on the same day that I was serving the search warrant, she was out killing her last victim.
Just wait a minute, then I'll be out.
Like Dana Sue's other victims, Dora Beebe is elderly, alone, and totally unprepared for a vicious attack.
What are you doing?
Dora Beebe was found murdered inside her home. She was beaten with a clothes iron, and her skull was fractured.
To psychologists, the attack on Dora Beebe is the final clue in a revealing pattern. All 4 of Dana Sue's victims were elderly women. Women old enough to be her mother.
Dana Sue had a lot of unresolved anger toward her mother. I think these older women that Dana Sue killed represented her mother, and she was just unleashing rage and anger.
To avoid the death penalty, Dana Sue Gray pleads guilty to multiple murders. A desire for money, a need for power, and a hatred of her own mother. Dana Sue Gray's disturbed mind made her a ruthless killer. who will spend the rest of her life behind bars.
Then when you look at her history and you see how violent she could be as a child with her mother when she was reprimanded, this was a murder spree in the making for 30 years.
She enjoyed doing things that were risky. She was a thrill seeker, and I think that she really enjoyed what she was doing. She got a thrill out of it.
When someone born bad is in a position of power and trust, the deadly fallout can scar even the toughest town. It's 1995. In a New Orleans restaurant, a brother and sister plead for their lives. They know their attacker. She's been their trusted friend and protector. Now, police officer Antoinette Frank is their executioner.
I think she's evil and sick and the most cold-hearted person I've ever dealt with in my life.
Antoinette Frank was the last person in the world any police department should have ever hired.
Oh, hey.
Hi, how you doing? Antoinette, nice to meet you.
Antoinette Frank dreamt of becoming a police officer from a young age.
Why do you want to join the force?
It's always been something I've been keen on, and I just really want to help with, crime and that sort of thing, and think I'd be just the perfect person.
But she should never have been given a badge.
Right, never been asked to leave, been fired?
Antoinette Frank initially was rejected on the job because of her psychological evaluation.
That's it. We'll have a look at all that stuff and,
The police department's process at the time then referred her to a psychiatric evaluation by a medical doctor.
The doctor finds her a dangerous liar with a troubled history. But Antoinette will not be denied. And the force is desperate for recruits.
They had a loophole built into the system whereby she could go to a private practitioner and get an okay.
And eventually he gave her the passing qualification she needed.
Once in the field, it's clear this 23-year-old isn't cut out for life on the force.
She was a terrible police officer who constantly had to go through supervisory review.
Antoinette Frank was a lousy police officer. She was very non-aggressive. She was timid. I've heard her described as sort of mousy.
According to author and former federal agent Chuck Hoostmeyer, Antoinette has another problem. Her best friend is a 17-year-old drug dealer named Rogers Lacaze.
She got him a cell phone, she got him a pager, she bought him clothes. She just doted on this kid. Antoinette used to take Rogers Lacaze riding around in her police car when she was working.
Hello? Hey, what's up now? Hey, it's just...
He answered calls with her. He went to traffic accidents. He even drove her police car.
Just here, pull up here.
If I didn't have so many court documents backing it up, I wouldn't believe it even as a novel because it's just so strange.
think Frank was attracted to Rogers Lacaze because he was young and he looked up to her and she could dominate and control him.
Like most police officers at the time, Antoinette does security work on the side. She guards the Kim An Vietnamese restaurant.
In the 1990s, it was absolutely essential for a New Orleans police officer to work a security detail just to pay the bills. They worked restaurants, bars, special events.
So how we do that? We did really well. Yeah, business is going really great. We made $25,000 tonight.
Or having a police officer at the door in uniform is a simple and fairly cost-effective way to deter armed robbery.
The restaurant is owned by the Vu family.
Shouldn't be too much longer. I just finish up and clean up and we get to go home.
The Vu family gave her birthday presents. They had lent her money when she needed it. They were very nice to her.
Thanks for your help, madam. Anytime. We enjoy having you here.
Their faith is tragically misplaced. They have welcomed a woman into their lives who is an ice-cold killer. In 1995, the streets of New Orleans are a tough beat for police. But there's a greater danger. Working within their ranks, a ruthless killer. Officer Antoinette Frank.
By the time she became a police officer, she was a full-blown sociopath. And she used her position that badge gave her to use and abuse others.
She's what you would colloquially consider a psycho.
Off duty, Antoinette does security at a Vietnamese restaurant with fellow officer Ronnie Williams. But just like her police work, this job isn't going smoothly.
She thought Ronnie was getting more hours and more pay as opposed to her. And I think that's kind of what triggered her into deciding to go to get the cash out of the place, and she felt like that would even things up.
That's okay.
With her criminal sidekick, Rogers Lacaze, Antoinette plots robbery and deadly revenge. The Vu family's trusted guard is now their attacker. Officer Ronnie Williams, a father of two, dies instantly.
They went there with the full intention of killing everyone there just to get the cash that may be on that location.
From their hiding place, Chow and Wok Vu watch in horror as their siblings are cornered by a monster.
Go away! Where's the money? Where's the money?
Very little planning whatsoever. Just total chaos and evil thoughts.
Where's the money?
Terrified, they give her what she wants.
The survivors actually could tell us they heard them begging for their life. she actually shot him execution style.
They were on their knees, on the kitchen floor, and she fired 9 bullets into them. This was a bloodbath. I mean, here you have an active police officer committing murder, and one of the victims is another police officer. It was unheard of.
It made me sick to my stomach. I could have vomited because the thought that a fellow police officer could kill another officer for the sake of money.
An hour after watching the murder of her brother and sister, Chow Vu makes a run for her life. Antoinette has returned to make sure there are no survivors. But Chow Vu is lucky. Police arrive just in time. At first, they assume Antoinette was the first officer on the scene.
Ironically, I felt like we had received an incredible break by having a police officer as an eyewitness on the scene.
Shaking in terror, Chow Vu finally reveals the awful truth. The killer is Officer Antoinette Frank.
It does take a particularly vicious, cold-blooded person to just gun down 3 helpless people who knew you.
Antoinette Frank and Rogers Lacaze are both found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death.
Neither Antoinette nor Rogers has gotten what they deserve yet. When the sentence is carried out, then they will have what they deserve.
I've handled, assisted, or supervised well over 1,000 homicides. Antoinette Frank, without a doubt, is the most cold-hearted person I have ever dealt with.